Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is a video to show you what's new with Cuisine Royale, or as it's known now, CRSED, which is Cuisine Royale 2nd Edition, Fulfillment of All Desire. If you're not aware already, there have been a number of new changes to the game that make it quite interesting, quite significant changes, and that's partly why they've renamed it, but also there are a number of really cool things going on here. You now have a couple of new characters, including a guy that can call in up to 3 zombies to follow him around the map. I've done a video on that separately because that new character is pretty insane. They've added in new vehicles that include some more swimmable vehicles and boats that you'll see in this video a bit later on. There's flamethrowers and mortars. There's a Barrett sniper rifle. There's multiple changes to the mystic powers and the way that traps and things work. There's a new event that you saw at the beginning of this video, which is basically a rocket versus rocket system, which is pretty nuts. Lots of grenades and explosions going on there. They've changed the way the unlock system works. They've also adjusted the melee combat so that the Uberpan doesn't do a one-hit kill anymore, and it requires a bit more work in order to get kills with. So that's great if you were fed up with the meta that everyone else seemed to be using, which is Viper, push traps, jump traps, run fast, and then just dashing up to you to pan you in the face. That is actually countered in a number of ways. Not only is the Uberpan less powerful now, but the way that the trap sprays works has also been changed. Traps used to cost souls in order to put them down, so those people would use push and jump and link portal traps in order to get close to you or get away from danger if they got into a fight. But now those things don't cost souls anymore, but they do have a cooldown time on them, so you can't spam multiple different things over and over and over and keep bouncing your way across the map or disappearing from fights or sneaking up on people in that way. So it means that way those people play has to be changed in order to cope with the new design style. So I'm going to talk to you a bit more later on about how that works and show off all that. They've also changed a number of things that include the way food works, for example. So you used to eat food and you'd get health back almost immediately. Now that health recovery comes over time. So actually if you eat a lot of food, you'll find that the blue doesn't damage you as much because your health can be ticking up while the blue's trying to take the health away from you. They've also changed the way the blue or the dark zone works in terms of the way it shrinks. So it shrinks slowly at the beginning of the game, but then faster nearer the end, which makes it just as dangerous or more dangerous nearer the end of it as well, which is pretty interesting. Now they've also changed the jetpacks. I'm going to be doing a video on that separately, and as you can see here, they've added in a mortar, which weirdly you can fire while you're in the air. I'll talk to you a bit more depth about mortars later on, but basically, as you'd expect, it's an explosive system where you fire off a mortar shell into the air, and it has an arc on it, so you saw the red arc line coming out of it. That shows you where it's going to hit, and you can shoot about 415 meters away, but it does take quite a while to hit the target, and flying in the air while doing it isn't terribly accurate, but it is a lot of fun. There's a whole new system for Spirit Guardians which add passive abilities that you can use in the game as well, and I'll talk to you about that later on. I'll go into a bit more depth about that. And they've changed all sorts of other things. For example, all tombstones now have souls attached to them. One other significant change that they've made is that the squad games now have up to 5 people in them, which is really nice and quite a significant change in the game. You'd often find that you'd be playing with squads of 4, sometimes 3 people. You'd also find individuals going into squad games and trying to destroy teams on their own, which is pretty nuts. But now you can get up to 5 people. That can be quite a different battle. Even more so if everybody in that squad is using the new zombie man, because he can call in 3 zombies per person, which means you can get a hell of a lot of zombies in one squad, making for a small army of pretty aggressive players. And I do think that this player might be a bit overpowered and will probably get nerfed in the near future. However, I am thoroughly enjoying him, and there are ways to counter him, which I'll talk to you about as I'm going through this. They've also added in some other things that include a Hex Bag System. This is basically a small grenade that you get to take into the game with you that does different things, and you can select that from the menu. And again, I'll show you it later on. As standard, you get what is a push hex bag. So you throw that at enemies, and it hits the ground nearby, and it pushes them a small distance. Not terribly useful, but it could be used for knocking enemies off of buildings and such. You'll also see that the nifty little boat system means that you can get about the maps more. However, it is worth noting the new map is absolutely gargantuan, so it does take a long time to get across, and it's worth making use of those vehicles. But if you're in a squad game with 5 people, you can't get all those people into a vehicle, so you either have multiple vehicles or get something like a bus to help you get around. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're doing this. There are also a number of different challenges in the game. There used to be old challenges where you'd go to a certain town and you'd have a challenge to kill a certain amount of people there, to loot a certain number of items, to shoot a shotgun at a certain amount of people, to get multiple hits with various different weapons. Now they've changed up the challenges. They have several different ones which will appear randomly when you go into a game. These include Player Hunt, which is where your player is tasked to kill another player in the battle and they are marked on their whereabouts. The other person that is the target then has to survive a certain amount of time in order to complete their challenge. There's like versus challenge, which is quite interesting, and obviously it means you're in a threat, so if you're in a squad it's worth everybody getting together and protecting each other. There's a voodoo doll delivery, which is basically you pick up a voodoo doll off the floor and then you have to take it to a certain fire and destroy it. The downside here is that that voodoo doll is marked with a green circle on the mini-map and on the map, so everybody can see where it is and where it's moving to. So if someone else grabs it and you have the challenge to get it, you can go after them and kill it, destroy them and get the points yourself. There's a mechanic one where you basically have to repair different vehicles and get that working. You find spare parts. You need 5 spare parts for the vehicle, and then you find those in the area and you repair that vehicle. There's a treasure one where you have to go to a certain town and dig in the ground. You'll find X's marked on the mini-map. Go over to them, press F, and you'll dig up some treasure. There's one where you're delivering a vehicle to a certain area, and there's a zombie cleansing one where you basically go to a specific town and you have to kill the zombies that are there. Those different challenges, completing those gives you levels in the game challenge menu that I'll show you a bit later on, which essentially allows you to unlock various things and work your way up to new equipment that you can use later in the game. Another thing that's worth noting that isn't immediately obvious is that they've added NVIDIA's DLSS support to the game. So if you have an RTX graphics card, you can actually get improved performance and improved visuals in the game too. Now, I was talking earlier on about the Hex Bag system. One of the most interesting things for me is this Hex Bag where you can have a zombie Hex Bag. The zombie Hex Bag is really cool. Basically, when you throw that, it explodes and it lets loose a standard zombie, one of those ones that just lumbers around trying to eat people's brains. I've used this numerous times in different situations where I've basically come across an enemy in a location, as you saw there, in a bunker, where they're in there and they're trying to gun us down, and you can distract them by throwing a zombie in there. Suddenly they've got a zombie to deal with that they weren't expecting to be there, and that deflects some of the bullets away from you because they're busy shooting at the zombie instead, or trying to deal with that, or they get killed. It's a really nifty thing to do. Now, the Hex Bags you can unlock by working your way through different characters, and I'll go into a bit more depth on this later on. But it also means that when you equip it, that if you find empty Hex Bags in the world, you can get more of them. So you can pick up an empty Hex Bag, which, by the way, you can't share with your team, so that's worth knowing. You'll find that in your inventory. You go to a fire and you use